Richie, you're very welcome. And special welcome as always to my little band of Patreon friends who help support keeping this going. And if you'd like to join their number, then that's the thing up there. And gratefully accepted. Now, what a week. Gary Lineker, the BBC's highest paid presenter, left the corporation during the week after he shared a social media post about Zionism, which included an illustration of a rat, historically used as an anti-Semitic insult. Now, Lineker wasn't aware of the image nor its significance and apologised unreservedly for any offence caused. Now, this is the latest incident with Gary Lineker. This is after the BBC said they had a frank conversation with him in 2023, following his criticism of the then Tory government's asylum policy, which he argued the language of which was not dissimilar from that used by Germany in the 1930s. Following that frank discussion, he agreed to step down from Match of the Day, but continue to front the FA Cup and the 2026 World Cup, which that was until this week and the social media post. No matter what the BBC says, Lineker will be remembered as a man of conviction and conscience, and as a rare example of someone willing to put decency before career. This is what the man himself had to say about his situation.
It's the worst thing I've seen in my lifetime. I've seen so many images of children that, I've got no skin in this game. I'm not Muslim. I'm not Jewish. I'm not Israeli. I'm not Palestinian. So I see it, I think, purely from the outside, as from a neutral perspective. And I can't think of anything that I've seen worse in my lifetime. The constant images of children losing their lives day in, day out. Now they're talking about, it already looks like it's happening, going into Rafah, where they've sent everybody down there. So, I don't think you can be, it's not anti-Semitic to say that what Israel is doing is wrong. And I just can't see how everybody doesn't see it that way now. I cry on a regular basis when I see certain images on social media.
And he's not alone. Lineker's not alone in the world of football. Now, everybody knows about the Lineker case because he's very, very famous. But other people involved in football have also paid with their jobs for having the courage to speak out. Men such as Mark Bonik, a kit man at Arsenal, who also lost his job because he supported the Palestinian cause.
My name is Mark Bonik, and I was fired by Arsenal Football Club for speaking up for Palestine. I've been at Arsenal since 2001-2002 season as a casual and ended up as a full-time kit man until 2024. So I did 22 years at Arsenal. I'd been speaking on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, which I'd been doing for years, since probably 2014 when I first opened up my Twitter account. Obviously it's been called anti-Semitic sometimes, and I swear, because I never was. A guy came on called Never Again, accused me of being a neo-Nazi, then found out where I worked, told everybody on the thread that I worked at Arsenal, and then there was a pile on me. It was cyberbullying. He told me what he was going to do. He was going to go to the FA, the police, the club, and tell them I was anti-Semitic, which he duly did. It got into all the papers, and he quite brazenly boasted about making me famous. The investigation found there was no anti-Semitism. They found that I'd gross misconduct. I'd brought the club into disrepute, basically being offensive and inflammatory. A lot of the people that suddenly became offended weren't offended by what I'd said or told me they were offended until they were told to be offended. I'm worried what people think of me. Do they think I'm some racist or anti-Semitic? And you get banter from the boys on a build. I've had to go onto a building site, and as a labourer, I'm fortunate enough that a friend of mine has given me work, but I'm a little bit old to be labouring. I won't be able to keep this up. I could have worked till I'm 70 at Arsenal as a kit man, which I'd planned to do. Now, I'm obviously struggling work-wise as a labourer. Football-wise, I don't go as to many games as I used to. I've sort of fallen out of love with it a little bit because of what's gone on. I don't regret speaking out about Palestine. I've never regretted it. And I would, I came off it to basically, I think, to protect Arsenal, to protect them from things, and it didn't work that way. The guy got it in the paper. I've struggled to see how Israel's still allowed to compete in international sport. We have South Africa that got kicked out for apartheid, yet Israel continues. Russia for illegally invading Ukraine, but it appears it's okay to invade your neighbours and steal their houses. I think not just Palestine, it was humanity to talk out when things are wrong. You've got to speak out. You have to speak out when things are wrong. And it's silence. People go, oh, everybody was silent over this. And then when you talk out, they don't want you to talk out. It's offensive to murder people. It's offensive to stab people. Apartheid's offensive. But, we spoke out against South Africa. Why should we not speak out against Israel? I'm the youngest of 6 kids. Well, I lived in a 3-bedroom council house. We were taught to stand up to bullies and look after the little people. I think this is where that comes from. I think standing up for Palestine is part of where it comes from. Don't like bullies. Don't like injustice. By taking Arsenal to court, I'd like to achieve, obviously, stability, recognition that they were wrong, the clearing of my name, and also the fact that other people will realise they can speak out, and Arsenal or the cyber bullies never again ain't going to bully them and will listen to what's said and then can make a fair and honest judgment on it. My message to Arsenal Football Club would be to the fans. It would be speak out. Arsenal want us to speak out about knife crime, kick it out, no more racism, but they don't want you to talk about Israel and what's going on there. Speak out.
Now, the mantra most often heard within the BBC is that they have a need for complete impartiality. This means BBC presenters will be curtailed from commenting on anything outside the remit of their particular programme. As for impartiality, anyone with a brain will have noticed that the BBC has been anything but impartial regarding the genocide being perpetrated by Israel in Gaza. From fronting soft interviews with the UK Israeli ambassador to insisting that those speaking in support of Palestine firstly acknowledge that Hamas and Hezbollah are terrorist organisations, implying that to support the Palestinian cause was in some way also to support Hamas or Hezbollah. Now, after the barbaric attack by Hezbollah on October the 7th, the Israeli government and IDF leaked disinformation that claimed that 40 Israeli babies had been beheaded during the attack. UK media ran with the story, even though French journalists at the time had asked for proof and none was forthcoming from the IDF. That claim has now been thoroughly debunked as a lie and disinformation. The question is, however, why did the IDF feel a need to embellish what was already clearly a brutal and savage attack by Hezbollah? We must presume, and we've got to presume this, that even at that early stage, they intended to wage a genocidal attack in Gaza, so severe that they felt the need to make such a false assertion, hoping in doing so they could in some way justify their subsequent actions. Not that they had to push hard for support from the mainstream UK media. One investigation looked at 4 weeks of BBC One's daytime coverage of Israel's attack on Gaza following October the 7th. It found journalists drew on the words murder, murderous, mass murder, brutal murder, and merciless murder, a total of 52 times when referring to Israeli deaths, but not once when talking about Palestinian deaths. Regarding the demand by the BBC hierarchy for complete impartiality, I got this idea. Can you imagine how that would have worked out during the Second World War when England faced the tyranny of Hitler? Can you imagine BBC bosses trying to justify to Churchill that all sides of the conflict must have equal time and be treated with impartiality? They'd have left that meeting with cigar burn on their forehead. And staying on impartiality, I wonder what Churchill would have thought of a Britain where you can only protest outside the Houses of Parliament if you're supporting Israel, with the police threatening arrest if you dare protest for Palestine.
If you don't do that, you are in breach of those conditions and you could be arrested.
What if we support Israel? Are we okay to stay or not?
I think I made it quite clear which side it was about. If you are in support of Palestine, then you are breaching your conditions.
And if we are in support of Israel, we can stay?
If you're in support of Palestine,
Congo, Sudan. So what is this about? It's so
What
weird.
is it about?
I understand if we can't protest at all, but like if we protest for Palestine, Sudan, Congo, we can stay. If we protest for Israel, we can stay.
Yes.
Just to make this clear.
There can be no impartiality when reporting on a genocide. For even to attempt such a thing is an abomination, in that it offers cover to those perpetrating that genocide. For 12 weeks now, the Netanyahu regime and the IDF have used starvation as a weapon of war, denying both food and medical supplies into Gaza. Since the start of their attack, there have been documented instances of Israeli forces killing journalists, medics, and ethnically cleansing millions of Palestinians from their homes in the north, sending them to the south in supposed safe zones, only to bomb the tents they forced them into. So emboldened has the IDF forces become that its soldiers this week opened fire on diplomatic delegates visiting Jenin in the West Bank.
هون آمن هون دير بالك السيارة ما تخليه في الوجه.
This delegation included officials from the UK, France, Netherlands, Spain, Norway, Italy, and Canada. The IDF has always justified its slaughter of civilians in Gaza, arguing that Hezbollah used civilians as a human shield. Now, this plays out in reality in the obscenity of complete blocks of flats being bombed to the ground, killing dozens of entirely innocent families, with the IDF trying to justify that by saying they were after one Hezbollah member who happened to be in the same building. While it was a lie that 40 Israeli babies were beheaded on the 7th of October, we know for a fact that since that date, up to March 2025, Israel killed a Palestinian child every 45 minutes. That number includes 1,720 babies less than 1 year old, 3,266 preschoolers between the ages of 1 to 5, 4,032 between the age of 6 to 10 years, 3,646 between the ages of 11 to 14 years, and 2,949 children aged between 15 and 17. In total, up to that March date, the number of children killed by the Israeli military stood at 17,400, with some estimates now indicating the number is well above 20,000. And this week, just this week, we learned another 14,000 babies could be about to die due to Israel's blockade of baby food getting into Gaza. We know this after Tom Fletcher, a UN humanitarian chief, gave this stark warning.
Let me describe what is on those trucks. This is baby food, baby nutrition. There are 14,000 babies that will die in the next 48 hours unless we can reach them. This is not food that Hamas are going to steal. No, we run the risk of looting. We run the risks of being hit as part of the Israeli military offensive. We run all sorts of risks trying to get that baby food through to those mothers who cannot feed their children right now because they're malnourished.
14,000 babies in 48 hours is an extraordinary figure.
It's chilling. It's utterly chilling. But this is what we do. We keep going. It will be frustrating. We will be impeded. We will run huge risks. But I don't see a better idea than getting that baby food in to those mums who at the moment cannot feed their own kids.
In response, the IDF allowed in only 90 odd food lorries when up to 500 lorries went into Gaza daily before the Israeli blockade. The slaughter of children in Gaza and the West Bank has wiped out a complete generation of Palestinians, while the world has looked on. And while much has been made of the stronger language used during the week by Prime Minister Keir Starmer, this words in the face of the brutal new offensive by the IDF called Gideon's Chariots. No actions, no sanctions. Instead, the cancellation of free trade talks. Ponder that for a second. The lives of 14,000 Palestinian babies hung in the balance. And all the British Prime Minister was willing to do was cancel trade talks, while he continued to allow arms to flow from the UK into the Israeli war machine. And a day after, quizzling words from Labour ministers in the Commons, a UK spy plane flew over Gaza, no doubt collecting targets for the IDF. And while Israel commits war crimes, the UK feels it's more important this week to arrest a member of rap band Kneecap for having a Hezbollah flag 2 years ago. Such is the moral bankruptcy of our leaders. And you know what? I'm not taking the moral high ground here. For I too, like most decent human beings, feel a bit of a coward. I feel totally powerless. You know, I even find it hard to watch videos, like any normal person, of dead Palestinian babies being dragged from homes reduced to rubble, having been bombed by the IDF, with no doubt them excusing it by saying, well, they were aiming for a Hezbollah underground encampment. I also find it almost impossible to watch film of children screaming in agony as they're operated on without any anesthesia, because the IDF also blocks essential medication in the Gaza, while bombing its health service into oblivion. I'm not going to display or play those horrendous videos, right? But I would ask you to take a moment after this to watch a selection of clips I've attached at the end of this piece. These include brave medics working to save the lives of innocents while under constant threat of Israeli bombardment. These individuals are on the front line risking everything, and they deserve to be heard, yet the BBC continues to refuse to air some of their testimony. As for the BBC, I take no pleasure in saying this, but the Gazan genocide has tarnished its gold standard for journalism forever. If you really want to know the truth, I'd suggest you turn to Al Jazeera News, where the influence of the Israeli government and IDF doesn't stretch. There's no doubt that by banning international journalists, Israel hoped that it could cover or hide the barbarity of its operations in Gaza and the West Bank. My message to Israel is, if a comic sitting in Ireland can see so clearly your crimes, be assured that the world is watching, and the world will neither forget nor forgive. People have noticed that I've had this up here for a while. I've had a wee collection of flags that I've used over the years. I used this in a comedy show. The Israeli flag. No. That would be wrong too. 70% of Israelis are opposed to this war. Genocide survivors in the Second World War have spoke out against this war. We cannot blame a whole people for a cabal of right-wing Zionist thugs led by Netanyahu. But I have to be honest, I cannot have this sitting on a wall behind me at the moment. So I'm going to take it, I'm going to put it away in a drawer with the genuine hope that someday, nauseated to have it sitting in the wall behind me. And before I go, remember, as I said, take a few moments, right? And just watch the testimony of these very, very brave medics. Testimony that, for some reason, the BBC will not run. These are people who daily put their lives on the line to save the lives of others.
This is the worst situation it's ever been. We are losing children left, right and centre from avoidable deaths. These are avoidable deaths. I lost a 4-year-old 2 nights ago from an overwhelming sepsis that in the UK would not have happened because I would have had the facilities to run basic tests like a full blood count and a renal function. I don't have any of that. Our blood bank is absolutely destroyed. These are all things that could be treated. We need the aid, irrespective of what's going on in the Strip with regards to, the politics. It's a humanitarian issue and we need to give these people food and medical aid.
Well, it's another day of devastation here in Gaza. The stories coming from the north, absolutely horrific, particularly around the Indonesian hospital, but also in Al-Mawasi area this morning where 36 people were killed in so-called safe zone. We've been operating all morning so far, all for explosive injuries. One young woman with leg fracture and a shoulder fracture and a large wound on her buttock, who came in yesterday and is not yet aware that everyone in her family was killed in the onslaught. It's difficult to describe in words what's happening here. Constant sound of bombardment, jets overhead. If Cambodia was the killing fields, then Gaza now is the slaughterhouse.
So it's Monday the 19th of May and I'm just standing in theatre. We've just finished a case and I'm not going to lie, I am quite down now. We've just operated on a 7-year-old who's had a blast injury that's taken a huge chunk out of the side of her left cheek, the back of her left shoulder and her left knee, and I've just been picking bits of shrapnel out of it and trying to get it as clean as we can. And then before her, I operated on her 5-year-old sister who has got a devastating injury to her left arm. She's basically broken the humerus, which is the top bone in the arm. She's lost 90% of the skin on her arm and she's lost the outer aspect of her left hand. And at the moment, I'm not sure that we're going to be able to save her arm. And then my colleagues next door, my orthopaedic colleagues next door, have been operating on their mother, who has taken a blast injury to both her shoulders and is missing bone and skin on both her shoulders, and they are not convinced that it's a survivable injury. So we're just waiting to find out how that's going to turn out. So yeah, not a great day for us here, I'm not going to lie. And to make matters worse, we've just found out that we are now on the edge of the active fighting zone. So we can expect the bombing to get much, much louder. And we have lost 4 members of the team who have had to go back to their homes with their tents. Because they're in the active fighting area and there's an evacuation order on them. So 4 of them have left us to go back and evacuate their families. So we're skeletal staff and it really bad times right now.
The defamation case being brought in Dublin by Gerry Adams over the last month about a BBC Spotlight documentary which claimed he'd been responsible for ordering the murder of IRA supergrass Dennis Donaldson. Well, it's rumbling to a conclusion in the next week or so. We learned this week that Mr. Adams is seeking damages of at least £168,000 to restore and vindicate his reputation. Hey, sounds a lot of money. That sounds a lot of money. But let me tell you, if Gerry loses, the damage done to his bank balance due to legal costs could run into millions. Millions. So with that in mind, I'd suggest that banks here tighten their security procedures, as we could well see another Northern bank robbery very shortly. Either way, Gerry had celebrity support with folk singer Christy Moore. He turned up at court to sit beside Gerry. We must presume that Kneecap were unable to attend due to their own ongoing legal difficulties. But, yeah. Enough said. Whatever you say nothing. Enough said. I haven't done this for a while. I haven't done... I used to love doing that, right? But I think this is a week where it'd be remiss of me not to acknowledge the ignorance and stupidity one man exhibited. That man is none other than Minister for Communities, Gordon Lyons. Well, Gordon was invited to speak at an empowerment conference to celebrate female leadership in business and sport. Gordon began by looking out into the audience and noting that he couldn't see the people sitting at the back, but that he believed. He believed that the good-looking ones have all been sat in the front row. Seriously, in 2025, we're still hearing this shite. In that one comment, he managed not only to call every woman seated behind the front row ugly, but simultaneously diminish their achievements by suggesting the most important attribute for a woman isn't their intellect nor business and sporting acumen, but still their looks. Now, Gordon did apologise for his remarks, saying, "I recognise that my comment has offended some of the audience members, and for that I apologise unreservedly." So even in his apology, he managed to piss people off by failing to recognise, no, Gordon, not just some of the women in the audience would have been offended. The whole lot of them would have been insulted by your misogynistic, shitty gaff. Proof, if you wanted proof of just how damaging Lyons' comment was viewed, came in the announcement the very next day from the Communities Department that the minister had accepted, after many other invitations, he had finally accepted from the GAA an invitation to attend this weekend's All-Ireland Senior Championship clash between Armagh and Derry. First time he's attended such a senior match, even though he's Minister for Communities. And communities, I would suggest, would indicate more than one. Do you know what I mean? Communities in Gordon's remit seems to go from orange bands to bonfire building, which it really isn't. There's two communities. And I tell you what, you see if gaff-prone Lyons continues on his bull in a china shop routine, we can expect him soon to be holding a microphone at a Kneecap gig. And so, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is only fair and fitting that I say that this week, the week is Gordon Lyons. Well done, son. Congratulations. Gotta say, son. Unbelievable. Right from the 1950s. Good man yourself. The defamation case being brought in Dublin by Gerry Adams over the last month about a BBC Spotlight documentary which claimed he'd been responsible for ordering the murder of IRA supergrass Dennis Donaldson. Well, it's rumbling to a conclusion in the next week or so. We learned this week that Mr. Adams is seeking damages of at least £168,000 to restore and vindicate his reputation. Hey, sounds a lot of money. That sounds a lot of money. But let me tell you, if Gerry loses, the damage done to his bank balance due to legal costs could run into millions. Millions. So with that in mind, I'd suggest that banks here tighten their security procedures, as we could well see another Northern bank robbery very shortly. Either way, Gerry had celebrity support with folk singer Christy Moore. He turned up at court to sit beside Gerry. We must presume that Kneecap were unable to attend due to their own ongoing legal difficulties. But, yeah. Enough said. Whatever you say nothing. Enough said. A special Congress of the Kimugi Association this week voted in favour of allowing shorts to become part of the sport's official kit. Until now, the ladies playing camogie were only allowed to wear skirts, a weird hybrid of shorts and a skirt. The vote was 98% in favour, with 2% no. They were, no doubt, arguing that the sport should return to its Catholic values and have the women play in smocks and scarves like the good old days. Have shawls on them. That's what you want to have. Them boys sitting in the stands going, "Go on, Sheila! Go on, clatter it through the uprights, you girl, ye!" I must admit, I'm somewhat disturbed that I know that terminology. Oh, you can take a GAA to the boy, but you can't take the boy to GAA.
You'll do nothing. You hear me? You'll do nothing.